We're back. Bear Down segment, part of the Coach Steve Show. We're back from our vacation a little bit. We haven't spoken since before Thanksgiving. We're back. Zach, if you watched my episode I did by myself about the fire Matt Eberflus, I apologize to you, but I said you weren't getting paid for the week since I had to hop on and do it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. You know, I don't have like this retainer fee or anything. I don't have vacation hours with you, so I have to. You know, I go by almost like a commission basis. I can't get any money if I haven't worked anything. But I will say legendary rant because clearly pushed the needle enough to make a historic move over the holiday season.
Yes. Since you were not able to hop on anything to discuss, you did on Twitter, which of course, you know, we all did, and we were texting about it. I had said my piece about it. We're a little bit far removed from it now. What did you feel in that moment? Because it was historic. Like, we felt like it was coming, but as Bears fans, we've never done it. Like, the Bears have never fired over 100 years, never fired a coach. So what was your initial thoughts? What do we feel now heading into no more? First time in years we have not had a head coach named Matt.
Hard to believe too. How they land that up back to back? It was time. Okay. I think you could make excuses for what happened with Minnesota and what happened with Green Bay. I think that the office could justify enough. But man, we've been talking about this for a while, you know, and I don't think nationally people understood how poor our coach's skill set was until that moment, that faithful last series of downs in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. I think that really opened the eyes to the wider national audience, the wider NFL media base on how bad that head coaching situation actually was. Now, and I say this to remind people, and I don't base it on everything on Fox Sports or like certain articles, but keep this in mind, Steve. The week prior to this, you have articles and headlines that do like hot seats, like rankings across the board. Matt Eberflus somehow got less hot as a seat against Minnesota, which baffled me, baffled you, baffled everybody I talked to, that somehow that game, the national media aspect of it was like, oh, his job might be safer now. And then you learn the truth. The thing that every Chicago Bears fan that follows this team knew since last year, really at the end of the season, that he is not a good head coach. He's a great coordinator. He's a terrible head coach. He does not know how to operate and manage a game. And it finally got revealed to the point where you have two options here as a front office and as an ownership. You can either continue your path the way you always do, which, track record says you do it. But in that process, you ask yourself, similar to how you and I have talked, do you want to do the definition of insanity again? The same thing, just doing it over and over again, expecting different results, not moving forward, not acting correctly when the time sees fit. Or you can realize, hey, we have not looked good or have not had, I think, a viably good team administratively, in a sense, in a very long while. Even Matt Nagy, you have a 1 year off outlier, and it's been otherwise mediocrity ever since they moved on from Lovie Smith in 2012, that offseason. So I think they had to do something. It was this moment. If you choose to do nothing, I think you just basically add on to the what a joke this franchise is mantra that the national side of things, that a lot of people outside Bears fandom now are starting to realize that this team kind of is very complacent. It rides on its fan base buying tickets year after year, and it's actually one of the laughing stocks in the NFL when you take a broader view of how this operation's run. And so they did the right thing. It was the first time they've done it in over 100 years history. They did the right thing. They had to do it. There was no other realistic option, not for how embarrassed that was for that franchise, for how winnable, watching yourself pry away a loss from the jaws of victory. You can't walk away from that.
No.
I think the only thing I can even argue that they did wrong, and I'll give it some slack, but not much, is trotting out Matt Eberflus the day after for a press, as they are supposedly talking about his future. They tell him, hey, you know what? You got to go out there and talk to media, and making him imply and feel, at least it seemed genuinely, that he wasn't getting fired and that he made an ass of himself on a national platform on social media where it was live streamed the day after Thanksgiving, only an hour later to be fired. It was like the ultimate, the ultimate canning, but in like the most ugly way possible. Like damaging his own reputation in the process. That's the one thing I'll knock him for. But otherwise, it was the move they had to do. There's no other choice, Steve. They had to move on.
Yep. I'm going to repeat myself from my rant. I was very pissed off about that because I thought he wasn't getting fired. When he came on that press conference, I said, there is no way now.
I think everyone thought that. I think that knowing the Bears, and I'll let you keep going again because I'm sorry, but like, I think everyone thought that because that's just the Chicago Bears way. As soon as he said that, like, everyone bought that. Of course they did. This is the McCaskies. They don't fire people mid-season. They let them leave with dignity. But this time, that was a mess up on the organization's part. But otherwise, like, it was the right thing to do. It was.
And when he said, I feel confident, he goes, my plan is to game plan for the 49ers. And I said, okay, they're not going to fire him. Like, we're going to have to ride this out and just deal with the consequences of when you fire him at the end of the year. Are you going to be able to find a head coach? And I went on a big rant about, we can blame Ryan Poles as much as we want, but where was Kevin Warren in allowing that to happen? And I went on a big rant about Kevin Warren. I don't think he has any leadership. Yes, he might be good with money and getting a stadium and, good for him. But I watched it during the Big Ten times and it just wasn't cool. You were dealing with TV deals. I know before he left, name, image, and likeness kind of was getting pushed forward, and cool, you're good with that stuff. But in the NFL, as a president, you have to make sure that the product on the field is going to win football games. Like, I know the general manager deals with that stuff, but you have to have conversations with them and have leadership. And so as Kevin Warren, you should have put your foot down and said, no media today, because we need to have a discussion and make a decision. Like, and if you were worried about pissing off Matt Eberflus, like the respect factor that they all say they do, I think Matt Eberflus would have understood, like, okay, like, there is a chance I keep my job because they're talking. There's a chance I don't. That's not disrespectful. That's just saying, hey, before anything, let us do it. And ever since I did that, more information has come out. Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles did a press conference, and he said, yes, that's the one thing I regret is allowing him to do that. He goes, we just hadn't had time to meet, which I got mad about, and I hadn't had a chance to say anything. I was like, bullshit, you didn't have time to talk about. We have FaceTime, we have Zoom, we have whatever.
So much.
I know
you could have said him. I think what he was trying to do is he wanted to be like, well, I want to meet him in person. He's in Detroit. It's like, okay, but
then fly out to Detroit then.
Right.
Like,
I mean, you got to move on these things, and I think everyone would have understood if he called off the media availability. Okay. Like, for all the discourse talked about nationally the day after, I think we would have understood. So that little more affirmative action probably would have been a smarter play if we're talking like PR and optics.
Right.
That was the miss. That was a big miss.
That was a huge miss. It was, and what is funny that I'm shocked is they fumbled the ball with firing Shane Waldron. So when he came on the Zoom and was talking, I was like, there's no way they fumbled this twice, right? So that's why I was 100% sure he was keeping his job at that moment. Maybe they give it another week. Who knew? You know what I mean? Like, after the 49ers game, maybe that's when they pull the trigger. And I was like, oh my God, they fumbled it again. Like they screwed this up once again. And you know, nobody, like I said, nobody would have batted an eye. Yes, we would have been all over Twitter. This means he's fired. This means he's fired. But who cares? You could have literally said, "Hey, tell them you can't meet today. I want to see you in person. We're going to talk first. I got to talk to Ryan Poles. I got to talk to McCaskies and everything else." So that part pissed me off. And then I don't like the way Kevin Warren said that, like, he's going to lead the search for this head job. But then it comes back out later on and says, no, Ryan Poles is going to have the final decision in who we hire. And so now, and then did you see the pictures of all the three McCaskey sitting in their chairs? It looked like they got called in the principal's office.
I saw that.
Like,
I love that.
So it just kind of tells me, is there some turmoil up there? Because Ryan Poles looked extremely pissed, and it could go either way. Then a report came out, whether it's true or not, and I know you might fact check me, is that Ryan Poles kind of wanted to fire Matt Eberflus last year, but the McCaskies wouldn't let him or something. Who knows? I don't know if I believe that or not, because this was Ryan Poles' guy.
I don't know. I will say that I don't see the McCaskies as a very much a team that does multi-firing early, because of the fact that it does start costing a lot of money in the long run. Because like they actually owe Matt Eberflus till 2026.
But you know what? The Bears can afford it, so I don't want to hear that.
Oh, and they can, but I just don't see, like, I see the McCaskies. I mean, really think about this. Up until really this last decade and a half, they've always come off to me as a very fickle franchise. Remember, Mike Dick used to say famously that George Halas and the Halas family throw around nickels like manhole covers.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I mean, yeah, it sounds like a ridiculous statement, but it basically means they don't to put the effort in to throw the cash around. At least up until last 15 years or so, they finally have. But
yeah,
I still they're still going to stay with some ways of holding back. Coaching's one of them. They don't do like one and dones, or like they rarely do 2-year deal ones. Like Mark Trestman was a rare exception to the rule. They usually do 3 minimum on their coaches, and then they move on.
Yeah, so who knows? So this is telling me that is there turmoil going on between Poles, Warren, and the McCaskies, which is never a good sign. I know that I'm trying to give Kevin Warren a chance the best I can. I just know his track record. I'm very curious what kind of leadership style he's going to have. I just hope he lets Ryan Poles do his job. Yes, I firmly believe that Ryan Poles should go out there and try to find a head coach, but there is absolutely no problem with Kevin Warren also talking to the head coach with Ryan Poles just to get a feel, but let Ryan Poles make that decision.
Sure.
I have no problem with that. I just don't want Kevin Warren to like, hey, I'm going to hire the head coach and you're going to deal with it. I hope that doesn't happen. And I don't think it will, but it was just, they say it's the Bears. They say it one way, and then I think they see all the media stuff, and then they have to come back out and say, no, this is what we meant, or this is how this is going to happen, which is just this turmoil that happens. And I don't like it. So Matt Eberflus is gone. Another an offense coordinator and head coach fired within 3 or 4 weeks of each other. And Kevin Warren, they promote Thomas Brown to interim head coach, which we all knew would happen if they fired him.
Yep.
He's interim head coach. I got confused because I've seen 2 posts. They made somebody else the offensive coordinator, like named him the OC and sent him up to the box. But then it also said that Thomas Brown was going to call plays from the sideline. So then it was like, why'd you name him the OC? I hate this when they give guys, like when Andy Reid gave Matt Nagy, like the OC title, but it's like he's not calling plays. It's Andy Reid.
Right.
So I hate how they give a guy the OC title. But because I saw a post about this guy being the OC, I cannot remember his name. I'm drawing a blank. But then
I'm trying to grab it real quick, but yeah, keep going here.
And it said that he was going to call plays, and I was like, why? Why would you end up play calling? And apparently this guy also called some plays during the preseason as well. And so I was very confused, but then I'm reading how they're asking Thomas Brown, how is calling plays from the sideline going to be different than the box? And he was saying that he's going to get a feel for the game on the field and be able to talk to the players, and he's going to have to adjust. He has to be on the field being the head coach, so he has more responsibilities. So it's just like, I hope it's Thomas Brown calling plays, and I think it is. It was confusing to see those.
Yeah, so he will be calling plays still. That was reported on December 2nd via the Bears' own website. So he is right now scheduled to be the play caller for the remaining 5 games where he will be on the field. However, Chris Beatty, who is the receivers coach, now being elevated to the offensive coordinator role, will be working alongside him for these final 5 games.
Okay, see, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with. Now, I just hate how they gave him the OC title. Like, you might as well just call him like the co-OC and put him up in the box and say your job is.
Well, that's what I think's what's going to happen here is he's going to be kind of his eye in the sky, and they're going to use comms to kind of work out what Thomas Brown might want to call, plus whatever he talks with Caleb or whoever comes off the field and gives on-field kind of like evaluation. So that's the way I'm viewing it. Like, I think Brown would prefer to be in the box, but he's got to be there. So might as well kind of shift some things around.
And then Eric Washington, going to be the defensive coordinator.
Right.
So
instantly fix that if you're firing Matt. So,
well, I'm as long as Thomas Brown was calling plays, I was okay with it. I know it's going to be different from the sideline, but the positive part of him being on the sideline is he can immediately talk to Caleb Williams and immediately like get a feel for what's going on a little bit. Like me personally, I've called offensive plays from the box and the field. I prefer the field because I like to get a feel of a game. I want to talk to the players. But when you're in the box, you see everything. Nobody's talking to you. You're focused only on that. You have a desk where you're writing stuff down. And, I think that's where Thomas Brown was leading it. And that's who I think it was Big Cat. He was like, why can't we make somebody else the interim head coach and just leave Thomas Brown in the box because he's doing so well? But,
I get it. But I think they just like how the players respond to him. Like, you hear that since he's taken over. Yes, they still haven't won games, but it feels like he demands more respect and also gets the players more motivated, which I think is why they're doing this. It's like, well, if they're gravitating to you, and again, I have to stress this enough. Former assistant head coach, that has to mean something
for Sean McVay.
Yeah, that has to mean something when you're going, okay, he's calling offensive plays. He's been making this offense look better. He has been in a role where he basically is getting that knowledge of being a head coach under one of the best head coaches with a tree in the league. I mean, it just seems like that was the avenue. Like maybe if they weren't responding offensively, they go and they switch things up and they find the most veteran member on staff. But it just makes too much sense. The upward movement over the last 4 weeks just makes too much sense. So
right. So like I said, I'm 100% behind Thomas Brown being the interim. I like how he's speaking to the media. I like how he's taking responsibility if things aren't going right. I like how he's talking about how they're handling practice. And like you said, the players were responding well to him. They said they feel energy from him, and they're motivated by when he's talking to them and coaching to them. So I do like that. He is I think he's 38, so he's kind of close to their age, and he's able to relate to them a little bit. As long as he was calling plays, I'm good. I'm wondering what the defense is going to look like now with Eric Washington calling it. I think he coached D-line too, so I'm curious what they're going to do. But again, it's the same thing that happened with Thomas Brown when he became the OC. You can't really throw everything out and start from the ground up during the season, especially with the losing streak we're on. So it's like you got a handful of games left. Yes, you're going to tweak some things. You're going to do whatever. But I will say this, he has more time than Thomas Brown did. Like if Matt Eberflus was fired on Friday, Saturday or Sunday, you name him the DC, you've had all week to kind of get your thing going. So I don't defensively, we'll see some differences. I can't tell you what they're going to be, but there will be a little bit of differences. So I'm curious to see what that defense is going to look like. The offense keeps evolving. I know the Lions against the Lions in the first half, I was like, oh God, this is terrible. I think I tweeted, I was like, is Matt Eberflus calling plays? Because it was just god awful. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, did you notice how the offense looked a little different in the second half? Like it did feel like Thomas Brown was probably
a little different.
So the offense is going to keep evolving. Caleb Williams balled out in the second half. O-line gave up sacks again when they shouldn't have, and all that stuff. That's been a problem. You know, they do good until the very end, and
yeah, the situational sack where Larry Borum just goes, okay, here you go. Feel free to just rush on back there.
right.
Last drive of the game.
Before we talk about like the 49ers and stuff that has come out is like the locker room, and they said after the Lions game, the locker room was turmoil, and they had to get Matt Eberflus out of the locker room because they were all very upset. I think it's Jalen Johnson. He is saying a lot to the media that Thomas Brown kind of addressed, and all he said was family business stays in the family. So he's big on be careful how, in layman's terms, be careful what you say to the media, and if stuff's happening with the team, we got to address it in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of speculation of have they brought the stuff to Matt Eberflus and he just never fixed it in the locker room. But also, I didn't like how Matt Eberflus would say things during press conferences, sometimes blaming players, like in his own way, kind of saying these things aren't like the 15 yards isn't a big deal. Like, who says that? You know, like those type of things.
I think his press conference demeanor is part of his downfall. At least what led to this cascading to like almost a breaking point with how the clock management was made in Detroit. You know, yeah, and I read the same thing as you. You know, it was Adam Johns actually kind of breaking down the Athletic, which great write up on the entire thing. You know, Jalen Johnson is arguably the most vocal member of this Bears team that we've seen. It may be Jaquan Brisker on social, but it's not the same as like Jalen when he's in the locker room. And it's funny because like in the same article, he references how Johnson also was very similar towards the end of the Matt Nagy era, where it was getting to that point where it's like, what are we doing? It feels like, you know, just basically pointing out incompetence and responsibility not being, you know, shown up is how it felt. And that's exactly what happened. Like you can tell he's been trying to hold back in recent interviews. A lot of players have been holding back a lot. They've been trying to hint as much as they can without getting in trouble internally.
But I also think Jalen Johnson has to be careful of that, because if you're speaking out about a head coach, when it's time to re-sign you, do the Bears go, well, you talk too much about the coach? And then another team, like I was talking to some people about that, like sometimes you got to be careful. And I think that's maybe because maybe Matt Eberflus let them say that stuff. Who knows? Like Bill Belichick is the master of getting those guys what to say at a press conference. I think Thomas Brown will be like that, just listening to how he's answering questions. I think we'll hear less of that type of stuff especially when he said that, like, keep it inside, like we'll handle it inside. Mm-hmm. So I think part of that will be a little disappear on us a little bit. But I thought Matt Nagy was like a player's coach. I know, what was it, last year? I think they said he's losing the locker room, but then when they started winning, it comes back, and they were fine. Then this was kind of like the last straw of it, and they've had enough. And, you know, I can't blame them, but I also think you shouldn't be blasting it everywhere, because it's going to affect you when you want to sign a contract, because that's going to be a red flag of, does a head coach want to bring you in when you're doing this?
I agree, but I mean, it's also he's been pretty much a soldier in footstep for 3 years now. Like that has to be hard to say nothing. Like, again, you're a player, you trust that your essentially your coaches and folks that are advising you on how to best play your role and operate how you play your role are going to do things to put you in a winning situation. And it's got to be hard to resist to not go, wait a minute, this guy who goes to the podium every time, we leave the locker room after we sing Kumbaya and try and make things, right, even after an ugly loss or, something where we're like trying to understand the point of view, proceeds to go and near every press conference post game knocks a player's performance or something that they could have done better without any sort of course
Right.
of taking blame or responsibility, always defending mistakes, even to the point where, to a fault, where it is something like Thanksgiving, where Matt Eberflus, same thing. He defended every decision he made on Thanksgiving Day to a team.
Which
I mean, how can you resist holding back? I applaud that he waited 2.5 years to finally lose it, because that would have been my breaking point.
I'm okay with him blowing up in the locker room. I think it's the media part. Like, I get it. I'm not saying like he's totally wrong. I just think sometimes to be careful. And I think he was more reserved, but and I know he's kept his mouth shut. Just now that he's done it, don't make it a habit of, if Thomas Brown's not if things don't go well with that, are you going to start bashing Thomas Brown?
Well, I mean, I think he realizes things are going to get reset too. I mean, it's a little different when you're a player going, okay, this isn't guaranteed to be what's next year. Like, it's kind of out of your hands a little bit. Like, you still need to play hard. Clearly, he's one of the highest paid players on the Bears roster right now. And I'll be fair, he's making his money. Mm-hmm. He is clearly up there as a top 5, top 3 DB in the league right now. But, yeah, I mean, I get you, but I also think he understands that this is likely, unless they just blow people out of the water to end the year, this is likely not who's going to be the staff next season.
Right. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then it's been kind of quiet the last 2 days, but it was like one day after another, you're getting more. Mm-hmm. Another thing that pissed me off, and I forgot about this, I remember this being said last year, but then it came out again. And this is why Kevin Warren sometimes can kick rocks, is that Jim Harbaugh showed interest in the Bears.
Oh, don't get me started. I read that report today, and he dismissed him.
What? Kevin Warren blocked it, and it's because Jim Harbaugh had enough of certain rules with NCAA and the whole buying a kid a cheeseburger thing and all that stuff, and you know what I mean. And so him and Kevin Warren butted heads a lot, Kevin Warren blocked that. And it's like, you're telling me that a guy that won in San Francisco, played quarterback for the Bears, it got Michigan back on track, runs a style offense that could fit well with the Bears, a quarterback whisperer, wanted to talk to you, and you said no. So that's where the leadership part of Kevin Warren is like, come on, man.
This is different, though. That's the thing. This isn't college anymore.
Right. And and it's so petty. Whatever arguments you might have had with Jim Harbaugh or whatever it is, you need to put that aside, because this is the NFL. This is not college. This is not this. You have a big responsibility now as president of the Chicago Bears. Come on, man. Not saying they would have hired him. Not saying Jim Harbaugh would have decided to go. I don't think a part of me feels like they would have screwed it up and said, we'll keep Matt Eberflus. Fine. But at least if the guy wanted to talk to you, kind of like how he talked to the Vikings, bring him in, talk, see if you can't, if this is real, does he really want to go back to the NFL? Is this something he wants to do? And have a conversation, see if you can't. But man, you had to block it. That's why Kevin Warren,
rough go. I mean, you hear these stories, honestly, any post Lovie Smith coaching hire, you hear about Bruce Arians, how he wasn't even, I think, taken as seriously as a coaching candidate, or the fact that during his coaching candidacy, this is a story that still breaks me about this, is he was asked to do mock interviews, and he apparently had told the ownership at the time that, well, I just did interim coaching with the Colts. I'm not going to do this.
Right.
And they basically blew him off because he wouldn't follow the steps.
Yeah.
Man goes on to, credit, this was his Cardinals tenure, but I mean, look what he did with Carson Palmer. I mean, we can go all the way back. And there's been many instances as the years have gone on where it's like,
Right.
Misses or non-interviews that just seem to be nonsensical things that happen. Just another piece of the pie. Kevin Warren, because of personal grief as a former Big Ten commissioner, goes, nah, we're good. He can go coach somewhere else. I don't like this guy.
Yeah, and then just watch what he's doing with the Chargers. Like,
right, 8-4 Chargers. They're only just getting started. Like, imagine what they're going to do next year when they invest at spots they need. Like, come on.
And just Herbert's playing more consistent.
Think about this. The main thing the Bears have needed is a stable coach that knows situational awareness and how to operate in game. Does that not scream Jim Harbaugh to you?
It does.
That's hard. That one was hard to read this week, Steve. That one hurt me.
Yeah, it was hard. And then I'm like, I'm not surprised because I've seen this with Kevin Warren in the Big Ten. So I've seen this before. One of my best friend was like, as soon as Kevin Warren became president, he goes, I don't know if I can look at the Bears. He's like, I can't even look at them. And it's like,
Warren does have a reputation. So that's true.
Right. And again, he did the thing with the Vikings. I'm sure stadium talks, money, maybe. And he's really, I'm trying to give the guy respect. Like, yes, you are good at looking at stuff like that. 100%. That's why you were brought. They said that this is why you're here.
Oh yeah. He just told for it's a new venue or to replace the venue they have right there.
Right. Or yeah, let's just say that a new stadium rebuilt in the same spot is in. Like, get this done, whatever. He's still battling with the Arlington Heights thing, but that's what he's there for. That was his background, is like that stuff. Cool. I respect that. Hard worker. You moved up. Awesome. But watching the leadership of the Big Ten when you're responsible for all those schools, now you're in charge of this whole organization. And then that's one of your first things that you did was block a talk with Jim Harbaugh just because you probably had disagreements with the guy.
Man,
like, come on, man. Like, if that's the truth, just say, you know what, you're always going to talk to Ryan Poles. You're not going to talk to me. You're going to talk to Ryan Poles.
Well, it makes you wonder. And I guess that's the one saving grace is that Ryan Poles has to sign off on what Warren chooses. But like, that's the crazy part is like, you're reading about how they're going to do it. And it's Warren takes the lead with Poles assisting. Warren then picks the candidates to offer to Poles is what I'm gathering. Poles signs off if he likes the candidate.
This is
I mean, with no McCaskey input, which, I mean, let's be frank, the McCaskies have shown at every step of the way, they have little to no input and do not know how to pick people anyway. They always hire people from the outside. So like, does that really matter when someone lists, the McCaskies are involved? No shit, Sherlock. They never are involved in picking the coach. That's like, there's their bread and butter. No, you don't have to tell me that. I know they aren't involved.
Right. So this is what I'm scared about with like inner turmoil and what's going to happen up there, because Kevin Warren, if you don't want Ryan Poles there because you didn't hire him, get rid of him, get somebody else.
Well, now that's the thing. It's a grander question, because Poles, I think there's a split in the Bears fandom on how Ryan Poles is viewed anymore. On one end, you have that, yes, he's made these great swings for people. The DJ Moore trade is still a fantastic trade for assets and them building a core. On the other end, though, he's had a fair share of whiffs and missteps over the last 3 years that have been, I think, really sore spots this season. Again, a former offensive lineman not establishing or investing or being afraid to spend money on offensive line.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was
It's a little weird to me to even mention that, but that's a big eyesore. Right now, I think a lot of people have been scrutinizing the Montez Sweat trade because he's been very lackluster this season.
Right.
In terms of production, and they paid him a lot of money. He's 28.
Right. I'm going to misquote this. It was either Warren or Poles saying, we know what we need to do with the roster, like where we need to go. And everybody's like, yeah, the O-line. We said that 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Like,
I think that's his most damning thing he's messed up is, somehow, and I hate to even say this like this, Steve, somehow we've circled back to like late stage Jerry Angelo, where it's like, oh, don't worry, skill players, the line will figure itself out. Bears are currently on pace to like have at least somewhat close to a record season of giving up sacks.
Yeah.
But remember, Jerry Angelo before he got fired, it was the same thing. Look at all these amazing skill players. We got Brandon Marshall. We got, Jay Cutler. We've got Matt Forte. No line to block people when getting sacked.
Nope.
Funny how that works. It's funny how history repeats itself. But it's even worse because, again, former offensive lineman. How? I still don't get how that happens.
I don't know. And like I said, in the draft, it better be all linemen, D-line, O-line.
It's a draft, free agency, anything. Like, you still have decent cap next year. Go out and look for pieces.
Right.
For God's sake.
Got to get all that done.
Fun fact, by the way, Steve, I learned over the weekend that apparently, yes, we've been critiquing Colton Shelton, but apparently the center spot in the NFL overall is just apparently weak because now he's ranked top 10 by PFF in the center position as overall grade at 68.7.
That's another Bears thing, is that our O-line's always ranked really low, and then as the season comes to an end, they're like top 12.
Right, but think about this. A top 10 center in the league by PFF is ranked under 70.
I want to see the centers under.
How bad is the center position in the NFL right now, Steve?
It must be really bad. I haven't paid that close attention to it. I want to see the other centers. How's bad?
How bad is the spot right now?
Jesus Christ.
Must be god awful if Colton Shelton's playing top 10 right now.
My God. What kind of world are we living in?
Crazy town.
But
confusion.
But now they got to travel to San Francisco and play a banged up, struggling 49ers team.
Winnable 49ers team, by the way.
Winnable.
And I'm going to lead right into this because I double checked. And this is one of the nice things about us doing this on a Friday, because you get the full scope of what the injury report's most likely going to be. So I'm going to list all this off here, Steve. Here's what we are dealing with this week. And I'm telling you, Bears don't walk away with win this week. I have many questions. Yeah, I get it, interim coach and whatnot, but listen to this. This is a 49ers team that this week is missing Trent Williams. Will likely have another week missed of Nick Bosa out. Remember, Christian McCaffrey went out last week with a PCL injury, but also people forget, I almost forgot, Jordan Mason went out with an ankle injury. He is expected to be out for this game. So they're going to be leaning on their rookie running back, Isaac Guerendo, who has had some moments, but not the same as the other two. He has not been the same caliber. So keep that in mind. You're missing your starting tackle, which, by the way, statistics show that Brock Purdy plays worse when Trent Williams is not in because they don't have as quality of a left tackle as Trent when they have him missing. Also on the defensive front, they still, besides Nick Bosa, they're still missing a few other key players as well. They thought Greenlaw might start this week. He's not going to be back, mind you. Frank Warner's been banged up through the season, and yeah, keep in mind that maybe he might not be as healthy. I mean, they're injured all over the place right now. This is as winnable as San Francisco's been in the last 3 years.
Yep, and they're on a 3-game losing streak right now.
Your only downside this week is really the fact that you do have Ryan Bates out again, so you have a little bit of internal line issues to worry about still. Elijah Hicks is out, and you got some banged up skill players in Swift and DJ Moore. And you're playing on the road in San Francisco. But Bears fandom travels well in California, so is that really a problem? Like, this is so winnable, Steve. This is the perfect tee-up game, I think, for an interim head coach to start his 5-game stretch to prove himself.
Absolutely. Like last year, the year before, if it was that 49ers team, I'd be like, oh, God, there's no way.
Well, and keep in mind, too, like you're going against Kyle Shanahan, who, wheels might be falling off the tracks in some ways, but like the man still keeps some sort of competency every year, whether it's an injury-prone season or if he's one of the best in the biz during that time. So,
but they
perfect test as well to see if your coaching is up to snuff, at least better than what the floor is.
Right. Because the last 2 games for the 49ers, they've gotten blown out 38-10 for the Packers and then 35-10 in that snow game. And everybody's going to say this. We played Green Bay close, and if they're getting blown out by Green Bay, there is an opportunity there to get this. Even though we lost to New England and they beat New England, but you can go back and forth of their whole schedule. But you got to look at the last 3 to 5 weeks and how they're playing. Now they're going to be at home. It's not going to be snow. They're going to be more comfortable playing there. Like if this was in Chicago, you'd feel even more confident because, oh my God, it's been so cold here. The other day it was like -8 with the wind. So like it's been cold in the suburbs, but I am not too worried about this game now that Matt Eberflus is gone. You have new blood. Caleb Williams is playing much better, and you don't feel as nervous for this game. And then it's kind of like, what do we have to lose now? Like we're not going to make the playoffs. What do we have to lose now? You know, Thomas Brown is now auditioning for the head job essentially, either here or somewhere else.
Correct.
And so I think they're going to leave it all, hopefully, because the offense has had more energy. So I'm hoping that the defense shows up with more energy. And if they do so, they could be in a good spot to win. And that was another thing of Matt Eberflus's downfall was not winning close games. You know, like they've been
No,
there.
not at all. Not at all, my friend.
Like the Lions, you know, that was a great game yesterday. I'm so glad they beat the Packers. But two NFC North teams, like we took the Vikings to the brim, we took the Packers to the brim, we took the Lions to the very end. So it's like
should have gone overtime. Honestly, should have gone overtime minimum against Detroit.
Right.
You know?
Should have won against Green Bay. The Vikings go to overtime. If you don't give up sacks and you don't whatever, you're having a different conversation. The Lions you could at least tie it and went to overtime and give yourself a chance to do something. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good especially with the injuries that the Niners have. Like you're feeling pretty good.
I mean, dude, it's like how do I put this? This is like setting up the vaccine of games in a way. For reference, what I'm talking about, so that no one's like, is he talking anti-vax or something? No. Stop that. Pause. Not going to get demonetized like that. What I'm trying to say is vaccine. It sets up a very weak version of a virus for you, or at least a weakened state of a virus. The body takes over with white blood cells, destroys it. It's prepared for anything else after the fact. I'm sorry. This ain't the San Francisco that you know from last season, where they are one decent overtime toss of a coin and understanding that to try and beat Kansas City, or, you know, the year prior where it's just, you know, one better NFC championship performance. We could be talking back-to-back seasons. No, it's just not how that works. This is a banged up Kyle Shanahan year. And Kyle Shanahan does this every few years. You get one season where his players it's all medical card. And they all just go out. They just kind of get to the end of the year, like sub 500 or 500 team. You know, they're scrappy, but they don't win games because they aren't healthy and they aren't pulling things together, you know? And so this is the perfect setup. Chicago's about what they've been all year. Yeah, Ryan Bates has been in and out on being off field. Yeah, they've had banged up players. DJ Moore's been on the injury report. DeAndre Swift has at times, but they're healthy enough to go out there. This is winnable. You know, this comes down to coaching at this point. You know, this is a game I feel like Matt Eberflus, if he is here, would find a way to lose in an embarrassing fashion because it's Kyle Shanahan and he's just that much better. But
oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I don't have much else to add. The only thing I would even be worrying about is what we've talked in the past about the Bears' run defense, and even that's a softball. I like Isaac Guerendo. I've seen plays where he's made impacts, but Jordan Mason's the guy. That would have been the one that I'd been freaking out. And
for sure,
the top two guys there are not going to play this week or out for the season. So
right, and that's where you feel. And then hopefully that's like a new juice with someone else calling plays. Like I said, I still think Matt Eberflus if Matt Eberflus gets a defense coordinator job, that defense is going to be good because that's all he has to worry about. He doesn't have to do anything else. They'd be good. I'm hoping that with somebody else in there that some juice comes in and they could find a way to just slow down the run game. I know we would never fully stop one, but just to slow it down here and there. That was the difference in like the Green Bay game where just in the right moments, you're going to stop it. And so I'm hoping with somebody else there, with Thomas Brown on the sideline, maybe going over there and talking to the defense, just like, hey, I'm not telling you what to do, but like motivational type stuff and feeling maybe his energy. Because if we score a touchdown, I guarantee he's going to be running up and down and like fist pumping, like he's going to be excited. So I'm hoping that that's what will happen in this game. And with the 49ers having a down year when they weren't expecting to have a down year, like they were expected to be near the top, is kind of affecting them a little bit. Brock Purdy's kind of come back down to earth. I still like Brock Purdy. I still think I love his story. I love how he plays.
Oh, I am too. And I think quite frankly, the 49ers have some questions of their own, but it's more about an aging roster personally.
The aging roster is like, and we're not going to talk about Kyle. We'll talk about our new segment here, but like that's happening with this 49ers team. Like you made it to a few Super Bowls. You try to keep that roster together. Well, over time, and I said this with like the Khalil Mack days, like in the Matt Nagy days, I was like, you got to win soon with this Super Bowl caliber defense because it was like that was a Super Bowl defense because they're going to get older. You saw it with the Ravens years ago. Like they've always had that type of defense, but then those guys start to get older, and then even offensively, if you have an offense, they start to get older, and it starts to like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to make some changes. And that's kind of what is happening with the 49ers right now is you wanted to win the Super Bowl those times you were there. You were kind of hoping maybe you get back today, and they just and they're getting old. And they played a lot of games. When you go to the Super Bowl and you're doing that, that's a lot of games.
Well, so they're getting old, but the other part of this question that has been revolving since last year is, they got quarterback question too. And I'm not talking about performance because I think Brock Purdy, I like Brock Purdy personally.
Right.
I think whatever happens in the next 2 seasons, he's going to go play somewhere. He's going to start, he'll get a contract and make a decent chunk of change. Because right now he's getting paid pennies on the dollar to be one of their top stars.
Yep.
But here's the thing with the NFL. It's about numbers. It's about the now. Yes, they were within one good drive and stop of winning the Super Bowl last season. Like one decent drive winning Super Bowl 58. Think about that. However, this year, it's about a right now moment. And I mean, he's barely going to be making it to 20 touchdowns on pace right now, the way he's going.
Right.
And that's just through the air. He's going to be 3,000 yards passing. He's only had 8 interceptions, but the touchdowns have dropped down, and I think that's what's got people questioning is like, hey, can he be explosive enough? And does Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch want to go down the same path where they might have, and I don't know if it's truly this, but might have like a Jimmy Garoppolo part 2, where like really good in the system, can make the system work, but he's not going to go over the top and blow the doors off the building like some quarterbacks will. And that's the thing. I know this is a Bears show, but like talking about him, because I think it's one of the most fascinating storylines in the NFL is what happens with Brock Purdy the next 2 seasons, because he starts negotiating next year and they can choose to pick up his 5th-year option if they want. But does Brock wait this out to keep getting paid super dirt cheap for being Mr. Irrelevant, by the way? Or do they move on and let him go and try and get his bag somewhere? And then what happens with Kyle Shanahan? Is he okay with resetting? Do they reset entirely and keep John Lynch on? I mean, they're a fascinating case. Like you're talking old age roster plus not 100% sure what they're going to do with the QB. Like,
right.
I think they were really wanting this to be another follow-up year where it's like, oh crap, like high 20s to 30 plus touchdowns. And like, we're going to have another great season, dominate the West, and it's just not been the case. Injuries have been a huge part of it, of course, but like, I mean, they're 5-7 and it's, Brock's doing all he can, but clearly he's not the Superman yet, or he's not the, as he said in the offseason, he's trying to be like taking a Tom Brady mentality. Well, he's not there yet if he's trying to get there.
Right.
So tough choices. That's a team I would definitely be wondering what I'm going to do as a fan, like what's going to happen soon.
Right.
For them.
Because they spent a lot of money on these players too. So they're looking
they have a lot of cash for a lot of old players. I mean, their cap is weird right now.
It is. Man, we should start a 49ers show then.
Well, shoot, man. I mean, Brandon Ayuk this year, credit injury, but like he wasn't playing up to snuff whatsoever.
No.
For the first year of his big deal. He held out long to get that money.
Right.
For not anything that he was worth at the time during this season. So, I mean, there's a lot of money in San Francisco. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Even Deebo Samuel, he's probably, I think he'll be moving on soon. Because his contract's coming up.
I think and we'll talk about it at a different episode, but you could see the 49ers doing a whole reset with everything. It could be something, and that's why
Yeah.
this is perfectly teed off for Thomas Brown. Like they're in that the Bears are in their own situation. The 49ers are in their own situation. The Bears have just played stable programs of like no head coaching problems, and they're not going anywhere. The rosters are different, so you're going to play out there. It's going to be warmer. The Bears will fit in just fine. The Bears are known for playing in cold or warm weather. Kyle Shanahan's still an offensive guy, but the last few games has not put up the same numbers. Like you said, Brock Purdy's not throwing the same way that he has been with injuries everywhere. So the only problem I could see them is trying to just run the football a little more, which is the Bears' Achilles heel. But when they don't have their top two running backs, it's curious to see how that is when you're out your offensive tackle. How is that going to look? New guy calling defense. So now for the 49ers, they have film on the offense. They could look at their defense, but it could come out and be a little bit different defense for him. So that's the only plus side. I don't see it being like a scoring fest just because of the nature of the game. And,
Yeah.
it's still the Bears. I mean, I could still see the Bears winning like 21-17.
I actually think this will be, I'm going to be a little bold. I'm going to say they win by double digits.
Ooh.
And maybe I'm overcompensating for how I feel about San Francisco this year, but watching what happened in Buffalo and just seeing more injuries at key positions and positions where Chicago, like if they had healthy department of anything in the run game that isn't a rookie running back, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like this is a winnable game. And I also think, like, again, Brock Purdy's not bad, but Bears passing attack is pretty damn good even against the best quarterbacks. It's really, it really comes down to when, like, it's later in the game and you see like Matt Eberflus decided at the time, likes to play soft coverage, likes to play back, gives a lot of open space. I'm wondering if Eric Washington saw those flaws and is going to be way more aggressive as a play caller than Matt was. Because, I mean, even Matt, like, remember, first 2 years of Matt Eberflus, not a blitzer, hated using blitz. It was always about the 4-man set and trying to keep the linebackers back in the second level. But now you notice, like, we see it, rushing attack's not getting the job done, so they have to sneak people up, or they've been blitzing way more this year.
Right.
It feels like. And I'm wondering if that continues, or, maybe, they have maybe because Eric's been watching this play out, maybe they found a way to re-energize the front four to get better production.
Well,
it's gonna be hard, but
and Thomas Brown as the head coach, maybe he goes up to and says, "Hey, this is what would hurt an offense from an offensive perspective. This is what we're not doing to hurt the offense." So I'm hoping that he kind of is not telling them what to do or anything, but if you're the quote unquote head coach now, like, to step in and say, "This is what we probably should be doing if we could figure out how to do it with the guys we have."
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Thomas Brown is kind of more of that. I'm going to be in the defensive meetings too, and kind of, get used to that, because again, this is his audition for Bears or somebody else of look what I could do, and if you could do something. So
part 1 of 5.
Right.
There we go.
And I didn't mean to interrupt your score, but I was turmoiling with myself. I wanted to say 28-17, but I was trying to be like, okay, I'm trying to figure out. So I'm trying to find the even ground of, like, let's just go 21-17. If
21-17. Okay.
And I was right with the Lions Bears. I said 23-20, and it ended up being 23-20.
You nailed it on the head in the most gruesome way possible.
I should have put a bet in. I should have bet the whole house on that score. And
so if it's like last year, then you can bet that the Bears will somehow win by 10 at home against Detroit.
Yes.
If we're going to play, because, I mean, it's playing out just like last season, an improbable close win in Detroit for the Lions. Go lay a goose egg in Chicago. You watch it happen now.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be like the I've got nothing to lose team, and they'll be the one they drop come into the playoffs or something like that. Just wait. Right. You can see it happening.
So what score do you think's going to happen? 45-10?
No, hell no. They're not going to blow them out the water. San Francisco's still really solid as a roster. They're just missing pieces that I think would make the Bears' day more hellish and would make this harder for me to see. Like it'd be, I think either way they get a win. I just think it would be harder for them to kind of comfortably walk out of here. I'm going to give it 24-13.
Okay. I like that score.
Yeah, they're going to give up one touchdown. They'll play the bend don't break defense, but I think there's not enough offensively that San Francisco musters up. Like, unless Brock Purdy comes out and has one of his 300-yard days, which he's had them this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't see it. I think they actually get at least one pick on Brock Purdy, and that'll help turn the tide a little bit. Maybe it's later in the game or something like that. But yeah, I got 24-13. I think defense will hold up okay, especially without any of the better running back options behind center. And I think that you're going to see at least what feels like at least a good thing for once, you know? Yeah, it'll feel good. There'll be a win. Chicago gets out of the losing streak, and then we start true evaluation on, discussions of maybe Thomas Brown is the guy. That's what you'll see next.
Before we get to our brand new segment, because there's going to have a new segment, it's rumored that Oklahoma State will be firing Mike Gundy.
I saw that. I wanted to ask you about that because the whole situation. Did you read about this, by the way?
I just read something about they want to restructure his contract and he would take a little bit less money just because of how the seasons have gone. But who knows if this is true, but it said like he is not going to accept that. And so if he doesn't accept it, they're going to fire him.
So I'm wondering if he's going to become like another one of these coaches like a Nick Saban, where it's like he doesn't adjust well to NIL, because the report reason why they're cutting his salary back. Now, credit, this year they underperformed massively in what I thought was a weaker Big 12. Like, to be frank, like them and Utah and whatever, like the whole conference was flipped, first thing. But second, like, this is a new era, and Oklahoma State, I don't know how big their like NIL donation base is, but that was the whole part of this report, was that they wanted to take some of his contract, which I imagine is pretty decent size since he is the second longest running tenured coach in NCAA, and they wanted to move it to NIL.
Right.
And if he's saying no to that, to me, that just screams he is not a fan of NIL or something like that.
To be honest, most college coaches are not a fan of what's going on.
But I think a lot more accepting the new reality. I mean, you see Kenny Dillingham, he clearly has been pushing that, where it's like, hey, you want these players? Start paying into your collective. Kansas today, they announced Jalen Daniels. They made an agreement with him to bring him back. They're talking about players like they are actually contracted like NFL players now. Like, I've heard more this year offseason saying we've reached an agreement.
It's so
players.
sad.
Like, it's crazy. So but I think Mike Gundy is going to be a victim of this system, is what it looks like. And because that's the thing, they need money for NIL, and he probably makes a shit ton of money at Oklahoma State.
He is responsible for 26.4% of Oklahoma State's all-time wins. Nick Saban is responsible for 21.1% of Alabama's all-time wins. So, I mean, and Mike Gundy played football there.
Right.
So this isn't a college one. We have to do a college episode. Maybe we do a college one day, because me talking to these college coaches and getting some insight, they accept it. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of coaches are just kind of embracing it. Doesn't mean they like it. Like Brett Bielema just did a press conference yesterday saying it's National Signing Day, or for a lot of other people, it's called Bank Day, because he's like,
Bank Day.
He goes, it's Bank Day because they cash in on these players. He goes, if you look at the collective and name, image, and likeness of Illinois' budget versus everybody else, he goes, have you seen this? He's like, people are spending like $20+ million on signing in this roster. He goes, here at Illinois, like, we're spending 25 to 30% of it, like less than that, and he's like, so a lot of people that come to Illinois want to come to Illinois. And he goes, and the fact that we're winning with that kind of formula is good. And so, yeah, I just saw that and I was like, because I like Mike Gundy. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, I mean, Mike Gundy, I mean, like I said, for that program, so much he's done. But, if we're talking, like I said, the modern day college football, as soon as they put in the report, that they're trying to move some of that money to NIL. I'm like, this is, I mean, credit. It's perfect timing, right? Like any other year, imagine trying to be like Mike Gundy any other recent year where you're a competitive Big 12 school, always in the conversation, you know, about being a Big 12 champion. Like, they're not going to do that this year when you're the basement dweller. Of course, this is the perfect time. Like, this is totally the time to do that. But it's also going to probably be a new era for that team.
Right.
You know,
this is his worst
I
season.
don't see Gundy as an NIL guy in the sense where he's going to play ball. Like, he's been around for decades now.
He's been the head coach since 2005.
Right. And we're talking 20-year tenure. You know,
this 3-9 season's his worst year since his first year when they went 4-7. Ever since then, they're winning
and
7
again
to 12 games.
And again, in what should be arguably one of the weakest seasons of Big 12 in a long time. If we're looking at the talent pool that's there in terms of like no Oklahoma, no Texas, you know, Utah's a powerhouse, but like it's weird. It's a weird year in the Big 12.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. I saw that and I was like, oh God, okay. All right. So our new segment, which I was gonna make a cool video, and of course I'm a fucking idiot and never did it. We're gonna have a discussion at the end of each episode about who should take over for the Chicago Bears. Lots of names being thrown around out there. We're not going to do the obvious ones quite yet. We have a small list going on. So we're going to start off with the Mike Vrabel discussion. His name is thrown around. He currently works, is he like an analyst or something for the Browns? He's still around.
Consultant is his official name these days.
All-time great linebacker for the Patriots. He, I thought, had a decent stint as the head coach at Tennessee for the Titans. It did not end very well. That's still a topic of discussion of should they have gotten rid of him or not. Won some games there. They were in, you know, they made the playoffs, I believe, under him. So he's a Belichick disciple. He's one of the only guys didn't coach for Belichick, I don't think. Maybe he did. But, like, played for him, was able to have success as a head coach. People, I've watched him on podcasts. He seems like an awesome guy. Gets guys to play hard. He understands the rule book. He understands how to find loopholes, just like Belichick did. So his name is thrown around just because for the Bears, the question is going to be: do you hire somebody that's a good coordinator and they come in to be a head coach, or do you want somebody that can come in and just be a head coach, right? I don't know. I don't believe he called defense or anything. I think he was just kind of the head coach guy to make sure everything's going well. Because Kevin Warren them said that, like, they're going to look for somebody that's a leader of men. And that's, you know, and part of me is like, well, no shit. You want them to be a leader of men. That's what a head coach does.
Right. I mean, I hope to God that's what you're hiring. You know, you can't hire a best pal.
No,
that does not work. You can't hire a yes man buddy guy.
Right. So if that's your definition, you know, that's why his name's been thrown around. So let's talk about Mike Vrabel. Would he be a good fit to be hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears next year? What do we think?
Oh God, this has been a raging debate online. You know, I think what we're seeing right now is: do you want the stability hire, like the guy that's been that has, and I know some people try and argue differently, a proven track record, or do you want, you know, the new big popular name, you know, that, you know, hasn't been that spot but has great ideas and has shown that he has good ideas? You know, hard to say, because like if we look at Mike Vrabel as a whole portfolio, so you've got a guy on a like, if you look at on face value, you see a guy that has, in 6 seasons, he's only coached 6 seasons, by the way, keep in mind, he has a overall winning record in those 6 years, 54-44. He has 4 of his 6 seasons where he has winning records as well, mind you. So that also plays into it. He has, with that being said, he also, under his belt, has multiple division championships, 3 of them in a row, mind you, from 2019 to 2021 in the AFC South. 2 seasons of those were double-digit winning seasons. One of those an AFC Championship berth, where for at least a half looked like they were going to beat Kansas City, or at least be putting Kansas City on the brink. and were not considered an X factor in that playoff until they beat until they beat New England in New England.
Right.
So then you look at the other side of the spectrum. So they finished 12-5 in 2021, finished second in the AFC South. We remember in 2022, they had that Sunday night football game where Jacksonville puts them on ice and kind of gets into the playoffs. And, rest is history. Jacksonville goes on, beats Justin Herbert and crew the next week. Next year, 6-11. He isn't fired. He chooses to kind of depart on separate terms with the team. And I think there's a wider discussion here. First off, he didn't have Arthur Smith. And I think it's a lot of people they cue in is like, well, Mike Vrabel's not great because once Arthur Smith left, he was garbage. I'm like, okay, sure, fair. You got to pick out the personnel. You got to get the right guy that's going to call the plays and do the job. But let me also ask you this. This is the part where I flip the script a little bit. Do we not lay some of this blame on the GM at the time for how this roster was managed post 2021? Remember,
Absolutely.
AJ Brown was supposed to get a contract.
Yep.
And they completely biffed the contract negotiations with AJ Brown. He walks out the door. Like that's one of the biggest sins of the last several years is Howie Roseman basically fleecing Tennessee for AJ Brown because they couldn't get a deal done. And Vrabel, here's the thing, Vrabel only has so much say in contract talks.
Right.
At some point I ask, how much do you lay at the blame of him for trying to manage a roster that he was given and can only take so much credit of handling himself? Well, I ask this. I really do.
And that roster, when he was winning, wasn't like this all-star roster, if I remember correctly. It's not like he had quarterback.
Their 2021 season, a lot of people thought that should have not been the way it was.
No. Now he had his defense. He had some guys at linebacker and stuff, I believe, but it wasn't Kansas City roster-esque. It wasn't Buffalo Bills at the time. It wasn't. He got those dudes to play, and he won some close games. It was like old school Baltimore Ravens type of stuff and Patriots from back in the day. And so, and I love how they say, well, he was garbage when that guy left. It wasn't like it was 4 straight years of not having this guy and he was bad. It was 1 year. And then I just don't think Mike Vrabel and the upper management got along very well in those situations. And I think Mike Vrabel is just kind of like, I'm not putting up with this. I'm going to go. Before you fire me, I'm going to go. And I'm going to kind of reset, which is fine. Like that's every guy is entitled to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So for Mike Vrabel coming in, the positives of that would be, oh my God, this guy's going to get these dudes to play. A guy that played linebacker for Bill Belichick, won a lot of games with the Patriots. He even caught passes at tight end. They put him at tight end and do stuff, like a guy that understands that.
True players coach right there, if we're being honest. So
true. And he understands more than anybody that your O-line and D-line, because he wants to run the football, he's going to understand that more than anybody. And to get the dudes to play and have some energy, yeah, that's your guy. And a guy that could come in and just kind of manage everything. He did it in Tennessee. Like, hey, I'm the head coach. I'm going to let you guys do your thing, but I'm going to be there to make sure it's all going right and make sure this is going to go smoothly. So if that's what you're looking for, he's got to be at the top of the list of guy that's had NFL head coaching experience, former player, does that. Here's the downfall to that. When you hire a guy that's not going to call plays, can you trust that he's going to be able to hire somebody that's going to call defense and then call offense, and they're going to get done at a extremely high level? And then, now this next part, I don't think you should base this hire off of this next part, but it's just something fans and myself think about in the NFL. If you hire 2 good guys, like Dan Campbell's about to go through this a little bit. When you bring guys in, if they get it figured out and they're doing really well, and there's a head coaching job opening, they're going to go after those guys. So then you got to constantly.
How do you fill the void?
Right. Like Nick Saban was the master at it at college. Like he was losing guys and he was the master of bringing guys in and just never losing a step in college. Bill Belichick really didn't lose coordinators, and if he did, they always came back. So he was able to kind of, like McDaniels, he leaves, but then comes back, and then they don't skip a beat when he comes back,
Right.
So that would be the next part. I'm not saying that should not be the straw of why you don't hire him, but that is something of, is he capable of hiring the right staff, which he did with Arthur Smith. Like, that was proven. I don't think Mike Vrabel gave himself a chance to prove it again because of him and the management of not getting along, but that's a thing we got to think about here.
Right. I mean, look, you're hiring, if you hire Mike Vrabel, the way you're choosing Mike Vrabel because you got tired of watching Matt Eberflus mishandle in-game operations. You're not hiring coordinator coach, you're hiring a coach is
Right.
what you're doing. So at that point, you are relying on then the GM and the head coach to get the right personnel in. Now, here's my spin on this. And again, it's up to Mike Vrabel, quite frankly. This is where things get iffy, is like, if you hire a guy like Mike, you then go, can we retain anyone from this? Because I'll be honest with you. I keep seeing increased better performances from this offense with Thomas Brown. I almost would wonder if Thomas Brown, credit, he's probably thinking about opportunity, but he also seems to be a guy that these players love and respect, and he gets a lot of energy out of them. In a Mike Vrabel scenario, my ideal situation would be they retain Thomas Brown as offensive coordinator, similar to how Matt Nagy retained Vic Fangio back in 2018 when he was hired on, where they recognize, hey, there is a good coordinator on this roster. Let's not get rid of what is working right now.
Right.
And let's try and let's look at what we need to bring in that can be fixed or maintained. Because the thing is, with all the one-score games this year, I ask, what happens if you have a Mike Vrabel as a head coach today? Right now, if you had a Mike Vrabel on the sidelines today, someone that takes risks and gambles, but also is smart and savvy in the moment. We've seen this. It's not like we're forgetting that this man was a master of doing the most with the least during his tenure in Tennessee. People seem to forget that. He was a master at doing this stuff. Ryan Tannehill was the quarterback, and we're not going to say Ryan Tannehill was some freaking world beater QB. Yes, they had Derrick Henry, but you can't tell me Tennessee's defense as well was some like freaking top tier D. They freaking balanced the best of what they could find. They were situational. Mike Vrabel is a coach. He's a good situational coach. You give him pieces around him, which honestly, Chicago's roster, like, besides the fact they got to invest in line, which that's up to Ryan Poles, and he knows that now. Mike Vrabel's going to probably stress that, considering I think he's going to, in any interview, I imagine his first thing he will say is, I don't want to be betrayed by my GM and my staff again. I mean, seriously, would you not go in an interview knowing what happened in 2022?
Right.
And go, yeah, I better not see that betrayal again. I need some trust that the GM is going to listen to my demands and is going to be in the best vested interest of keeping players that are necessary to my vision.
Right.
So that's why I believe him. I think he's a guy who's a great leader of men. It's going to come down to coordinators. That's the main thing. It's going to be a knock. The coordinators, who you keep as a play caller, matters with Mike Vrabel. But I think in terms of a guy that has a proven track record, in my opinion, as someone that knows how to run this, like, again, you put him into a situation this year, I think Chicago is that playoff team we expected to be with a Mike Vrabel behind the headset.
100%.
So that's why I'm for it. Because if that's the only missing piece, and you can convince Mike to maybe keep on pieces that players are interacting with, well, again, hypotheticals, but in my world, that's where I see it, where it's an opportunity. But again, you're also passing up on new ideas and possible innovation with Ben Johnson, who is an unproven head coach.
Right.
So
that's why this is a unique situation. And I know we'll talk about Ben Johnson later on in the season. If they don't, they're not going to hire anybody right now, obviously, because the season's going on and everything else. I mean, they could hire Mike Vrabel since he's a consultant.
We should mention, out of the ones we're going to talk about, he's not the only one that has been ex-head coaching experience, but I mean, he's really the only main candidate on this list I've seen people talk about that's really head coach first, and it's about making sure that his coordinators are giving him the best of what he needs to run his team efficiently.
Right. And
like, he's not a coordinator coach. He is a coach, period. That is what you're hiring him for.
Right. And you need a guy that would not have this locker room turmoil like a Matt Eberflus. You need that type of person. He's going to hold him. He is like Dan Campbell. He is like a Dan Campbell. He's a coach. He is going to hold himself accountable. He is going to admit when he messes up. He is going to keep it short and simple like Bill Belichick. That's where he learned it from in his press conferences. He's going to keep everything in the locker room. He's going to have I think he is going to have respect of the players just because he played and he understands it. Not saying that a former player has to be the head coach, but it does help a little bit, especially when he has a proven track record of what he's done.
Well, understanding the locker room and how the locker room works is,
right.
I think, cannot be understated. You know, I mean, right. Dan Campbell is a perfect example. And I know we respect a lot of Dan Campbell on here. Like, dude, I could talk all day about Dan Campbell and, you know, yes, risk taker, but also understands his players, finds ways and best ways to motivate his players. But also, and this is why I like Mike Vrabel, is similar deal when Mike was at his peak during his 4-year run of winning seasons, you know, got the best out of his players and also, again, had his entire operation on the same page is the thing. You know, again, the reason it fell off the tracks, I feel, is because, again, I think his front office betrayed him in Tennessee. And I think it was during a transitional period where they really needed a coordinator. And that's the one knock I'll give on him, is that after 2020-21, they did not find the right OC, and that really doomed them. So
right. And
it's going to loom. That's why I feel like that's contingent on if you keep Thomas Brown on, that makes sense. If you don't, well, that's going to get scrutinized a ton.
Right.
Is the deal. It's going to get scrutinized a lot.
That's going to be hard to do, because if there's a head coaching job opening and Thomas Brown wants to go for it and they decide to and then if you're Thomas Brown, like, you are the interim head coach, somebody comes in and is now the head coach, it's probably hard to say, okay, I'll take a back seat to you because it's whatever. I know he's not the head coach right now, but he kind of is right now, right? Like, he technically is. That's really hard to now. Maybe Mike Vrabel maybe he could say, hey, you know what? I will help you get a job. Like, if you stay here, here's my blueprint. Here's what I think we can do. And maybe it is possible. But if there's head coaching jobs open out there, even if there's OC jobs open out there, and he thinks, you know, those type of things. So that it's not an impossible scenario. I think that'd be an awesome scenario to have. Yeah. But I think it's hard to have an interim head coach for 4 or 5 weeks, be the guy, and then all of a sudden they bring somebody else in. Like, is he going to think, oh, the organization thinks I can't do it, or everything else? But Mike Vrabel could sit there and say, hey, I will help you call plays. You're in charge of this. I'm just going to I'll be the motivational guy, make sure we're all in the right position. And maybe Mike Vrabel can say, hey, I'll prepare you for a lot of things. I'll prepare you for interviews. I'll prepare you for this. And so you will get a job. So that is possible. And then we got to trust Mike Vrabel is able to hire the right guys after that happens, right? So I'd be for it if they hired him. Like, a lot of the names that we'll talk about, I'm okay with a lot of them. Some, you're like, you know, but Mike Vrabel, I think there's more positive than there is any sort of negative. And like you said, the biggest piece is going to be he got the most out of that Tennessee team. And if he were to come to Chicago, they add a couple more pieces of what they have, and make sure he hires the right quarterback coach guy. If it's not Thomas Brown, if it's not Thomas Brown, because I think Thomas Brown could connect with Caleb Williams. If Thomas Brown were to leave and you hire an offensive coordinator, make sure that guy can really coach up Caleb Williams, or hire a quarterback coach along with the OC that can really help this guy out, or bring in a consultant or bring in an analyst that can really talk to him and get this going. But Mike Vrabel would be a good pick. There's more positives than negatives. And I think with that roster, he'll get the most out of it.
Well, here's the thing that I'm excited for if you were to pick Mike. I would argue this is probably the most talented roster he would ever have in his tenure since being at the helm. And again, this is no offense to the Titans teams he was helming over his 6-year tenure, but I mean, I'll be frank, like they caught lightning in a bottle when they went to the AFC Championship game years ago, and it was great. And it led them to 2 straight 10-win seasons. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I look at this roster the Bears have, and that's what people talk about, is like, this is a roster that's ready to win right now, has what I think is a quarterback with more upward momentum than what Ryan Tannehill ever had, by the way. I just don't see how, again, a guy who has been known for his career getting the most out of the least could not sit in, find the right OC, and get something out of it. Again, you need competency right there is what Vrabel brings to you, is the deal. I still think there's an argument to be said, and I think the reason why he's talked so much and why this debate is raging is because people do realize Vrabel is a guy that's going to be a top candidate. Like, he took a year off. He went to Cleveland. Cleveland's its own thing, but he went to try and help assist with that mess. And I think he's trying to evaluate what his options are. And I think he's going to get requested a lot as a guy that's going to get interviews. And I think he should be one of the top 3 candidates Chicago talks to, because he does lean into that one side of things. So, yeah. Good start. Vrabel definitely has made a stir online about this debate, but it's because you see the pieces that are the good pieces of what he did. You can't ignore that. Like, again, you just wondered what the hypothetical is with a better roster, what he could do with that.
Right. So I think we're both all okay with the Mike Vrabel hire. And,
I would not be ticked off if they hired him.
No.
But I can see why people would be mad, only because they, I think, want something to be completely game changer, break the mold 100%. So, yeah, it would not be a miss. Like, it wouldn't be a Matt Eberflus hire. Matt Eberflus was a lame duck. He was a lame duck hire.
Yes.
He was always considered that. People thought it was a weird hire when he was hired back then. This would not be weird. I think people think Mike Vrabel is going to get hired this coaching cycle. I would not be shocked if Chicago is the place he goes.
Right. And
so he's got to be a top candidate. I just don't see any other way.
And being like a tough coach, like a Dan Campbell, I think fits the Bears' identity mold perfectly if he were to come in. So, and again, we keep comparing to the Lions, how they tore it down and rebuilt it, but they did with like the O-line. But they also did it with a guy that could like relate to players, and that was Dan Campbell, who there's a video when Dan Campbell did his first press conference, he's like, we're going to fall down, we're going to get up, and we're going to bite kneecaps on the way up. I remember Stephen A. Smith saying he should be fired for that comment. Like, who makes those comments? And it's like,
I mean, it's amazing how different things are now than they were 3 years ago.
Well, I remember that press conference came out. Everybody was like, oh my God, who they hire? Oh my God. Oh my God. And I remember watching it going, no, I love this. Like, I absolutely love it. And I'm like, oh my God, if he can get the Lions to play like that, watch out. And like, look where they are now. So it's like, Mike Vrabel would be that type of dude, is like, we're going to hit you. We're going to hit you hard. We're going to do things the right way. We're going to yeah. Like, I remember when his name first got brought up in the back of my mind, like, really? But then once you start to think back and look at what he did, you're like, oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. I look at a guy that, like I said, I know there's been other people like, well, he didn't handle Malik Willis well. I was like, I don't know, dude. Malik Willis, I still ain't buying on that fully. But like I said, I see a guy that has a winning record, was an AP coach of the year, and was able to manage a roster that at times was beaten up to like a pulp with medical issues, or was getting the best out of who they brought on. Again, Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill had a solid career, but you can't tell me Ryan Tannehill was at any time in his career in Tennessee this like top 10, like, oh my God, he's lighting the league on fire QB. And they have a running game, and Mike Vrabel likes to run old school ground game as well. He's a guy that's like the older school, like establish the principles and do the fundamentals the best way possible, and you're going to win games.
Right.
So I like it for that aspect. I think if they don't talk to him, that's a disservice to the coaching search. He needs to be one of the top candidates on the board that Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles are hunting down.
Right.
Don't hold any personal grudges. I don't know if there shouldn't be anything like a Jim Harbaugh scenario, but like, look, he's not controversial. He's got a good track record. He took a year off. Talk to the man.
Right.
That's my advice. Like, he needs to be on the board. Do not make some silly excuse to wipe a guy aside. This is a guy that needs to be on your big board at the top, along with like a Ben Johnson or an Aaron Glenn or like a Brian Flores, like up there. You know, that's what it has to be. He needs to be on the top there.
Right.
So
100%. So yeah, that'll be a new segment. We'll talk about a different candidate once or twice a week of who we think they should hire. The more obvious ones will be later on, possibly. Who knows? But we had some candidates to talk about. Just want to start it off more positive of, would we be okay with this hire? And I think we both would. And we both have the Bears winning. So hopefully, you know, they play at 3:25 my time on Sunday. So it'll be a little bit later because they're in California. So they have to play a little later, I believe. But hopefully the Bears come away with the win. We'll see what other things come out of the Bears organization as it just continues to open the book on what's been going on a little bit.
Right.
So like and subscribe to YouTube. Follow on Rumble. This is live on Rumble as well. Trying out that lane a little bit. Okay crowd over there. I've been getting decent crowds after the fact. I ignored the Ghost of Judah tribe the whole time, if you didn't notice.
That's okay. We had a Turbo Duran with a few late quotes. I don't see the Bears beating Kyle Shanahan. He's a good coach. Well, they head out. I was kind of hoping someone would say something about Vrabel.
Oh, here we go.
Wait, hey, Chris, good to see you, bud.
Caleb the Clown versus Todd. Oh, yeah,
defense.
whatever.
Yeah, I know. We've talked this, but
yeah, whatever.
Actually, before we leave, I want to check this. What is the 49ers ranks? I need to check. I'm checking Pro Football Reference really quick before we go.
Oh, this is what he said. No Vrabel.
No Vrabel. I mean, again, this is a good, like I said, this is a debate because like the two sides of the coin are, do you want the established guy that's going to be more of like a cultural reset, or do you go for the guy who is, you know, the hot hand right now that, you know, has the offensive principles? And I think there's both arguments to it. I'm not honestly, I will not be mad either way, but to be fair, at the end of the day, I also admit you got to pick someone. There's no crystal ball that instantly tells you who's going to win, is what sucks. You know, hindsight is always 2020. It's just the stories of how it becomes 2020 is what will hurt me more.
Right.
If it's chosen the wrong way, just heads up. And finally, just because I am curious. So according to Pro Football Reference, San Francisco is 20th overall defensively this season. So not
That's
crazy, and credit part injury issues. You know, like I said, not a world beater right now, to be frank. Yards, let's see, total yards they've given up this season. They're actually one of the better ones in terms of like giving up yards. So that's good. Rushing defense, 18th. Pass defense, this one I'm actually curious about. Pass defense, wow, they're actually 29th in pass defense.
That's what I was going to say. They are not world beaters.
I still will hold that the Bears, this is a winnable game, but you know, San Fran is a well-coached team. It's an injury-prone team though right now. I'm still holding the double digit. I'm still confident. Screw the numbers. Throwing those numbers right out the door.
Right. Yeah, then Chris said that he would take Ben Johnson over Vrabel, Belichick, or Shane.
I don't want Belichick, and I wish him the best. I think Belichick either takes that NC job that they might roll the red carpet out for him, or he goes to Jacksonville. I don't think he has many options in the NFL right now, and I hope to God that I think the Bears should avoid him right now. And Shanahan just seems like it's not even going to be possible. I feel like they're going to write this one off as once in a while we have an injured prone year. Let's just reset next year.
Right.
So, yeah, it's Vrabel or bust if we're picking established guys. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Right.
That's what's going to happen there.
Right. But I will say in this cycle, there's a lot of good picks I think you could make. So
that's what makes it hard. There's a lot of options that have good claim. Like I said, Brian Flores, a lot of people I've talked to, they want Brian. They're like, your Bears should get Brian Flores. I'm like, maybe. But then I go, do I want another defensive coach?
Right. That's where I say pump the brakes.
Right. That's where I hit the brakes. It's like, yes, Brian had some okay years in Miami, but do I want another defensive coordinator at the head coaching position? And
you want a guy that, never mind, the pot was stirred a little bit, but anyway. But yeah. So we'll keep discussing these guys as we go along. So like and subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. Keep commenting. I'm not going to give Chris the time of day right now. I just don't have the energy.
Appreciate you stopping in, Chris. You just caught us at the last part of the show. That's the only thing.
So thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next time.